y'all, it's Amanda. Welcome back. Today we're going to talk all about every single new Pokemon revealed so far for Scarlet and Violet and why I think each one will be good or bad for VGC competitive play. Of course, right now we only know the first stage of each starter's evolutionary line, so this estimate of how good Sprigatito, Fuecoco, and Quaxly could end up is very likely to change once the games come out. Each starter has an ability which powers up its same type moves by 20% when the Pokemon has less than 30% HP. Those abilities are Overgrow, Blaze, and Torrent. Since they all have similar abilities and we don't know what their final forms will be like, including secondary typings that their final forms might gain, we can look historically to see which starter type typically ends up dominating its generation. So if we look at some of the most competitively viable starter Pokemon, you of course have Pokemon like Incineroar, which would probably be the most successful starter Pokemon in VGC. We also have Pokemon like Venusaur, Charizard, Greninja did very well in its generation, Rillaboom obviously. Cinderace has a niche, but it's not so great. Blaziken, there was a time when Blaziken was really just an amazing starter type. But if you look at all of the Pokemon that I just listed, hardly any of them were water types. Typically, water type starter Pokemon are just not that great in VGC. And overall, I would say that more fire type starters than grass type starters have really dominated their generations. So if I had to go with a guess here, just based off of past performance, I would say that Fuecoco is most likely out of the three starter Pokemon to really dominate this Generation 9 in Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. Now, Pawmi is the Pikachu clone for this generation, so it's an electric mouse Pokemon. In recent years, Pikachu clones have been extremely lackluster in VGC. Dedenne, Morpeko, and Mimikyu have not really had notable performances. And other than that legendary Pachirisu win at Worlds, Pachirisu didn't really have very many notable performances either in its generation. So I don't expect Pawmi to really buck this trend, and I really expect it to be a fairly forgettable Pokemon. And Lechonk, while it's an adorable little piggy, it is a normal type, which is not a particularly good typing either offensively or defensively. Both of its abilities could have some niche, though not overly helpful use in VGC. Gluttony is an ability that lets Pokemon eat berries normally eaten at 25% HP, like Figgy berries, at 50% instead, which can be useful with extremely bulky support Pokemon. And Aroma Veil protects this Pokemon and its allies from effects that would limit its move choices, things like Taunt, Disable, Encore, etc., which could be helpful to ensure partner support Pokemon are not affected by moves like Prankster, Taunt, or Encore. However, we don't know what Lechonk's final evolution will look like or what its secondary typing may end up being, so this could change, but I really expect Lechonk to be a physically bulky Pokemon whose terrible defensive typing holds it back considerably from being relevant in VGC. Smoliv is a normal grass type with the early bird ability. It's probably going to be a very forgettable grass type Pokemon similar to Eldegoss was last generation. It's got a middle of the road ability paired with kind of meh typing and a likely small move pool that really doesn't make me hopeful that this Pokemon will really excel in Generation 9. Fidough is a fairy type with the ability Own Tempo. Fairy type is a pretty good typing, especially since it looks like the legendaries, which are coming up later in this video, will be dragons. However, the ability is only meh, so this Pokemon's viability will heavily depend on its base stats and its move pool. And Cetition is an ice type Pokemon with the abilities Thick Fat and Slush Rush. Now, the ability Thick Fat can be really good, especially because Ice-type Pokemon typically do not have a ton of bulk, so that extra bulk from the ability will definitely help. This looks like a Pokemon that will have extremely good defensive stats, but the Ice typing is very poor defensively, so overall, it will be a Pokemon that wants to be very bulky, but I just see it being held back by its typing significantly. Cyclizar is a dragon normal type Pokemon with the ability Shed Skin. This ability gives the Pokemon a 1/3 chance of curing it of a non-volatile status condition like burn, poison, paralyze, things like that at the end of each turn. Now, this could be really great because Cyclizar does look like the type of Pokemon that will be a physical attacker, so having that 1/3 chance to cure burns could be super crucial in a lot of situations. So overall, I think Cyclizar does have some promise. It has a good ability. Its typing is not terrible, but I think it's really going to depend a lot on that move pool, those base stats, as well as whether Cyclizar will have an evolution or not. We don't know. It looks very similar to the legendaries, which are coming up later. But at this time, we really don't know if this is sort of a pre-evolution to the legendaries in the similar way that like Cosmo M was. Next up is Grafai. This little gremlin is a poison normal type, and it has the abilities Unburden and Poison Touch. I think that the ability Unburden may be less helpful here because it's unlikely that this is a Pokemon people are going to use an item like Weakness Policy with, for example. So it would have to be using some other sort of consumable item in order to get that Unburden boost. However, Poison Touch could be an extremely useful ability, especially on a team where that little extra bit of chip damage could really make the difference between winning or losing. Typically, Poison is not a particularly great status condition in VGC because games are played too quickly for that poison chip damage to really matter. But there are some situations, let's say you're playing a stall team, for example, where poison could be very helpful, and it looks to me like Grafai will end up being a physical attacker. So having those contact moves that are typically physical attacks is really going to help it with spreading that poison with the Poison Touch ability. And Klawf. Klawf is a rock type Pokemon with the abilities Anger Shell and Shell Armor. And just in case you didn't know, Anger Shell as an ability says that when a Pokemon's HP falls to 50% or lower, its attack, special attack, and speed all rise by 1 stage, while its defense and special defense fall by 1 stage. So it's basically giving you Shell Smash without having to use up a move slot. And the ability Shell Armor prevents a Pokemon from receiving a critical hit, even if they would usually always land one. An ability like Shell Armor could be incredibly useful against Pokemon like Urshifu, who always land critical hits. However, we don't know if Urshifu will appear in Scarlet and Violet or not. I will point out that rock typing is a very poor defensive typing, and Klawf as a Pokemon looks to me like it will be probably one that prioritizes bulk over attack power. So it's likely to have really good bulky, high defensive stats, but its typing is probably going to let it down there, and it won't be as bulky as people might expect. However, I could still see it having a great niche. Rock is a quite good offensive type, so it's possible with the right support, Klawf really could shine. So Armarouge and Ceruledge are two Pokemon that both have the ability Flash Fire. Now, Flash Fire increases your attack when you get hit by a fire move. We've seen it on Pokemon like Chandelure and Heatran, both of which have done very well in their generations of VGC. So I expect that these Pokemon also could do very well, especially with Pokemon like Incineroar running around. It's very easy to bait an Incineroar into a Flare Blitz and then swap in your Armarouge or Ceruledge in that spot and get an immediate attack boost. I apologize, special attack boost. However, if I had to guess, out of these two Pokemon, Fire and Psychic and Fire and Ghost, I would have to say that probably Ceruledge, the Fire Ghost type, will do better than Armarouge, the Fire Psychic type, just because as we've seen in recent years, Ghost type Pokemon do better than Psychic type Pokemon. They both share the same weakness to Dark type Pokemon, but Ghost type is just more effective against a wider variety of Pokemon, and it has fewer resistances, so it can really kind of slice through the competition more effectively than Psychic type Pokemon can, especially because Psychic type moves can't even affect Dark type Pokemon at all. Dark type Pokemon, while they resist Ghost type moves, they are completely immune to Psychic type moves. And finally, the two legendaries of Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, we have Koraidon and Miraidon. We don't actually know anything about these two Pokemon. We don't know their typing and we don't know their abilities for sure. If I had to guess, they will be some sort of dragon type. I mean, they look like dragons. Yes, they also look like motorcycles, but they look like dragons. So if I had to guess, they'll be some kind of dragon type. Miraidon looks like it might be sort of a Zekrom with a electric dragon typing. And Koraidon looks like it might be kind of a Reshiram with like a fire dragon typing. I don't know if they would put out another pair of legendaries with the exact same typing, but they definitely look like dragons to me. Typically, In restricted formats, since the advent of Zacian, dragon types do not do particularly well in this format. Some have. Palkia, for example, Kyurem has had some good showings in the VGC Series 12 that allows for 2 restricted Pokemon. But as long as Zacian is around, you will never see a truly dominant dragon type Pokemon, I'd have to say. So if they are dragon types, that will limit them considerably as far as how well they will be viable in VGC. So now that you know what I think about each of the new Pokemon, what do you think? Leave a comment down below and tell me why I'm wrong or right. And as always, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel if you want to see more like this. I'll see y'all later. Bye!